Hi everyone, this is Hannah, and today we're going to talk about how to build a set of speakers. So before you get started, you're going to need some materials. You will need some copper insulated wire. You are going to need a little bit of sandpaper, you don't need much. You will need 2 alligator clips, so 2 sets of alligator clips. You will need 1 really strong magnet, so here I'm using a neodymium magnet. And you will need a sacrificial headphone cable. So this is basically a simple audio cable, and I have cut it in half, and you can see inside it there are actually these 3 different wires. So if y'all can see those, there's 3 different wires, and I've actually sort of removed the coating from each of those 3. So now I've got 3 sections here. So this is basically a piece of a circuit. We've got a positive side, a negative side, and a ground, and the easiest thing to do is to just sort of wrap the white one, the ground, together with the other 2, with one of the other 2. It doesn't matter which one. And this is going to be how we will connect our speaker to a source of music. So you're also going to need a few additional things. You will need something that you can plug your headphone cable into. Please don't use a headphone cable that's worth anything to you. This should only be done with something you're totally happy destroying. So here we've got a prepared sacrificial headphone cable. You also will need something to serve as a resonator. So the first thing you need to understand is that sound is made by vibrations. So if I take an object and I vibrate it, then that object actually pushes on the air, and as that air is pushed, it creates sound waves. The faster that happens, the higher pitched sound it makes. So if there's lots and lots of waves happening really fast, it's a high-pitched sound. But if the waves are coming slower, it's a low-pitched sound. The other important thing is how hard it vibrates. If it vibrates hard, you'll get a loud sound, where if it vibrates just a little, it makes a softer sound. So you will need some sort of object that is lightweight and can move a lot of air. A classic choice is just like a paper or plastic cup. I happen to have a Tupperware food bin, so this is what I'm going to use. Basically anything can work. You can even take a piece of paper and fold it into a cone, like this, and just stick a piece of tape here along the seam, and this can serve as your resonator. All you actually need is just some object that can move a lot of air if it vibrates. So our goal here is to create a speaker that can play music that comes out of your iPhone or Chromebook or any sort of regular device. So in order to do this, our goal is to have some way of vibrating your resonator. And remember, your resonator could just be a piece of paper that's folded into a cone shape, or a plastic or paper cup, whatever you like. So we need some means of vibrating this object. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to use magnets. So we're going to use 2 magnets. One of them is a traditional regular magnet. Here I've got a nice strong neodymium one. You can use a plain iron like Kitchen Magic or refrigerator magnet as well. It just won't be as loud because they're not as strong. So this is going to be my first magnet. Now this container doesn't react with a magnet at all, so it's not a very useful thing. It's not going to make it vibrate on its own. So what we're going to add to this is actually an electromagnet. So an electromagnet is a magnet that can be turned off and on if you send a flow of electrons through it. So this right here is my copper insulated cable. So you can see it's just a wire. And the trick here is it's insulated, which means it's got this sort of reddish stuff on the outside. That's not going to let the electrons flow through it. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is take my sandpaper, and I'm just going to very gently strip some of that insulation off the edge of this copper wire. You want to be really gentle with the copper wire. If it gets tangled or tied up into knots, it's really hard to fix. So treat it very gently. And I'm just going to strip the end of this really thoroughly, because otherwise you won't be able to get a good connection, and it won't work very well. You'll have a loose connection in your circuit. And I'm just going to sort of scrape off some of that red coating until I've exposed the copper underneath. So the copper underneath, you can see, is a very different color. So it's sort of it's a coppery color. And I'm going to do that from both ends of my wire. So one end I've got stripped, and I'm going to go to the other end. You want to use around 3 feet or so of wire. The longer the better. If you use a longer wire, then you can actually make a better electromagnet, but it also means that you have more work to do if you use a really long wire. So what I'm doing with this is I've just set up my ends, so now I'm going to be able to connect something to either end of this. This wire is going to be part of a circuit. Now, electrons flow through a circuit, but if you have electrons and they move in a spiral shape, it actually creates a magnetic field. So I'm going to generate that spiral shape by just taking this wire and wrapping it around something round. I'm using an Expo marker, but you could use a pencil, you could use, the end of a kitchen appliance. All sorts of objects are round. You could use a battery. There's many things that you could do with that. And you just want to coil that nice and tightly around the end of your object. Leave yourself a little bit of space on the ends, like I have. And then you're just going to sort of slide that off. And I might recommend sort of giving it a little bit of a loop or a twist to hold it in that shape. So I'll sort of run this through on the edge a little bit just to keep it in that configuration. So this is going to be an electromagnet. And the way this works is if electrons are flowing through this coil, it'll generate a magnetic field. Now that magnetic field is going to be capable of interacting with my regular neodymium magnets. So my standard magnets will be able to interact with this while it is hooked up to a source of electricity. So my source of electricity could be a Chromebook. It could be anything with an audio cable, because I'm going to plug this in. And this is basically going to be plugged into some sort of audio device. And that audio device is going to play an MP3 file. And that MP3 file basically contains instructions for when to send electrons through the circuit. So this will be plugged in, and say electrons are flowing, they'll flow through one end, through this, right? So they're coming from one direction. And then I'm going to take this end here, and I'm actually going to connect that to my alligator clips. Alligator clips are just, a useful way of connecting things. It's just a bit of metal that can clamp down on something. So that goes to one end. The other end is going to go to one side of this cable that I've made. So now there's part of my circuit. Electrons are going to be coming through here. They're going to be spinning through this coil. And as they're doing that, whenever electrons are moving through this, it's going to be a magnet. And this magnet is going to be capable of pushing or pulling on my regular neodymium magnet. So the electrons move through this coil, generating a magnetic field. Then they come out through here. So now I'm going to connect my second alligator clip to the end there. Make sure it's touching the part that you've carefully exposed, where you've stripped the wire. The electrons are going to flow back through here. And then we want to send them back to your audio device. So we'll hook it up onto this. Sometimes you got to kind of wrap it around. Make sure you've got a really good connection there. Because if you don't have a good connection, obviously the electrons won't be able to flow. It won't complete the circuit, and you won't have a set of speakers. So now all I need to do is plug this into some sort of audio device. So let me see what I have available. I've got a Nintendo Switch. Let's try that. So here, you could use a Chromebook. You could use whatever you like. This just happens to be the closest thing to hand with an audio cable. So I will plug that in. And now I'm going to take my coil, and I'm going to firmly attach this to the bottom of whatever is going to be my resonator. So I happen to be using this. Again, there's many objects you could use, and I'm literally just going to tape it on. So let me grab some Scotch tape. Here I've got some tape. And I'm just going to firmly attach this. And the idea is this will be a magnet whenever electrons are flowing through. So whenever electrons are flowing through this, it'll become a magnet. And if I hold this neodymium magnet, keep your strong magnets away from any good electronics, by the way. Neodymium can wreck electronics. If I hold this up next to it, then when this is a magnet, it'll push off the neodymium magnet. And that can cause this whole thing to vibrate. It'll push away. Now, the trick is your electronic devices, the MP3 files, the music files that they're playing, will actually contain instructions for turning on and off this electromagnet. So if the electromagnet turns on, it pushes away. When it turns off, it goes back to its original position. When it turns on, it pushes away. When it turns off, it goes back to its original position. And in this way, it'll actually vibrate, because this will be happening hundreds of times in a single second. Now, if it vibrates really fast, you'll have a high-pitched noise. If it vibrates really slowly, you'll have a low-pitched noise. If it sends a lot of electrons through, it'll vibrate hard and you'll have a loud noise. If it sends fewer electrons through, it'll vibrate more softly and you'll have a quiet noise. So let's just give this a try. We'll see if I lucked out and it worked first time. I'm going to turn the volume all the way up on my Nintendo. One moment. And make sure it's plugged in. Alright, so now let's try putting this magnet near it. Oh, it is so quiet. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but it is actually playing music very, very quietly through there. And I don't think you'll be able to hear it in this video. Just wanted to give you all one more chance to hear that. It was a little quiet before, so I've plugged it into my computer now. And if I move this closer, there we go. Sometimes it's best not to have it actually touching. So I'm actually holding the magnet just a little bit away. And I know that that is very difficult to hear. You probably will want to hold your speaker up against your ears in order to hear the music, but you just take this magnet and you put it really close, but not quite touching. And you should get music. So your next task is to try to build one of these for yourself.